Hey guys! For this video, I'm sharing 10 tips for painting beautiful blonde hair in watercolor. Now, most of the time when you're doing a painting with hair in it, chances are that hair is actually attached to a person. So for this demonstration, I wanted to do more than just a hair study so that I could show you how you can paint the hair as part of a complete portrait. So let's dive in. Tip number 1, spend time getting an accurate sketch. A good sketch is where it all starts. Whether you decide to freehand sketch it or trace, make sure you've already decided on the composition and the scale of your artwork. Plan your approach based on your reference photo, but remember that you can, and you should, change anything that doesn't serve your composition. For example, use this preparatory time to decide which edges are going to be hard and which ones will be soft or lost. Don't put down harsh pencil marks where the hair is going to be really light, but do draw stronger lines in areas of high contrast and where there will be darker shadows. Do a light base wash in the skin so that the hair and skin are connected. Of course, how you start the painting will vary based on lots of different factors, but generally I like to begin by establishing some base colors using light washes, wet and wet. You can see here I've blocked in some light shadow shapes using a mixture of burnt sienna and alizarin crimson, and I'm allowing that color to overlap beyond the hairline so that the hair will feel merged to the skin. Reinforce your sketch with color. I like to block in the darker shadow shapes within the braid using burnt sienna and yellow ochre. It's easy to get lost in all of the different shapes and turns of the hair, so putting in these dark values helps reaffirm the drawing and gives me a nice basis for adding more washes over the top. Number 4, use a wide variety of colors. I used a lot of colors in the hair. Blonde hair is so much more than just tan. In addition to brown and yellow, blonde hair often has cool undertones or even hints of green, blue, and purple. It can look very golden in the bright sunlight, but in the shadows it often looks much cooler. So choose your colors based on the lighting in your photo or on your model, and really try to see the variety of colors within the different sections of hair. Colors that I used in this hair include undersea green, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, lemon yellow, transparent orange, and of course the more expected colors like yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and burnt umber. Even if you're having a hard time seeing all of these colors, never underestimate the power of adding a few pops of bright color. Number 5, move your brush strokes in the direction the hair is moving. I used only round brushes for this painting, and for most of the hair I stuck with my silver black velvet size 4 round brush. The nice fine point on a round brush works perfectly for creating delicate curved lines. Never use scrubbing or circular motions when you're painting something detailed like hair. In areas where the hair is overlapping and casting a shadow, paint the lines of the hair all the way into the shadows. Be careful not to create brush strokes that are broad and dark, especially for blonde hair. This will make it look outlined and cartoony. Now before we go on, I wanted to let you know that the full-length narrated version of this tutorial is available in real time. Just head over to emilyolsonart.com where you can access all of my fully narrated real-time tutorials for just a small amount per month. I also include a sketch and reference photo with those tutorials, as well as a list of all the supplies I use so that you can follow the exact steps to paint along with me. With the Fearless Artist membership, you have access to my Watercolor Jumpstart video course, which is the perfect place to start if you're brand new to watercolor. There's also a series of 20-minute tutorials that will help sharpen your skills and give you delightful, frame-worthy little wins in your watercolor journey. And join our private Facebook group where you can share all of your amazing artwork and get feedback from other artists. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can see all the tutorials that are currently available, and I'm adding more every month. All right, let's get back to the video. Number 6, work in sections. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're looking at all the details and trying to decide how to paint it all. Just work one little section at a time. Try to identify the light, the shadow, and the midtones within each section, and match your paint values accordingly. By the way, if you'd like to know more about value, I recommend this video right here. Lose the details in areas that are completely in shadow and focus more on details that are in the light. Number 7, don't be afraid to go dark in the shadow shapes. If you approach blonde hair with the natural assumption that it must be painted lightly, you will get something that looks flat and washed out. Blonde hair can still look blonde even with very dark values painted in, and it will look much more three-dimensional and realistic. Use rich, dark pigment for the shadow shapes, just being careful not to lose your highlights. I noticed that with this painting, I had a lot of shadows and a lot of highlights, but not too many true midtones. Most of my midtones were fairly light and delicate, layered on after I'd painted the shadow shapes, and painted with the purpose of accentuating the bright highlights. Number 8, make sure the paper is dry before adding detailed brush strokes. When you do a light wash on a section of hair, wait for it to dry completely before adding darker layers over the top. On the top of the head, I did a light blue and tan wash, and then I moved on to another section while that section dried. Usually there is enough to work on within a painting so that you don't have to just sit there and wait for it to dry. While you work on a different section, the first section will dry, and then you can go back and add the details. The reason this is important is because if the area is still wet, your dark details will blend out and just get lost. You definitely want most of your darker lines to be painted wet on dry. Number 9, simplify wherever possible. Now, painting every single strand of hair doesn't always yield a more realistic result. In fact, that approach, unless it's done with a highly trained sense of values, colors, and brush control, can often muddy up a painting. Focus on getting the major shapes, colors, and values, and add details once you're confident that the more important elements are all there. And finally, number 10, you can add a background and paint around some flyaways and stray hairs to really make your blonde hair pop. You'll be amazed at how the colors and values of your painting can appear completely different, in a good way, when you add a dark background behind a blonde portrait. The dark background can serve the dual purposes of helping the hair look lighter and blonder, and it can give it a more realistic look, especially if you include stray hairs and soft flyaways. Now, because blonde hair is never just one color and there's no strict formula to follow for painting realistic blonde hair, I want to show you a few examples of other portraits I've painted in which the subjects had blonde hair. In this one, the two children are both fairly dark blonde, and you can see a lot of the purples and greens within the shadows. Only a few strands of the hair are completely white. In this portrait of my daughter, I tried to lose the edge completely where the back of her head fades into the background. A few stray white hairs merely suggest that edge for us. For this portrait, I used masking fluid to preserve the white of the paper for the areas of her blonde hair that are in the light and the stray hairs across her forehead. In this image, the hair is very light and mostly tan, and I used the background to define the shape of her hair. Here's another example of using masking fluid for the stray hairs and highlights, and then painting the hair in layers from light to dark using distinct brush strokes that are moving in the direction the hair is flowing. In this painting, the focus is on the eyes, so the hair is painted really quite simply with just a few colorful brush strokes. You can see again here the use of purple, blue, and green. Now, although this painting is dramatic and yellow and colorful, we know the little girl is blonde because of the dark background against the very light, barely articulated hair, and because her skin and eyebrows are also very fair. This portrait of my son is an example of blonde hair that is so light, we absolutely need the background to help us understand the form. Only a few light washes of tan and brown make up the areas of hair in the shadow. This painting is tiny, only 4 by 4 inches. I used all the colors of the rainbow in her blonde hair, but we still get a strong sense of her blondness because of the highlights and shadows. Now, this is actually the same model as my braided hair portrait. Hopefully you were able to glean some helpful information from this video, and as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.